Before we get started with this ranking, before you get started, I've already done it, but before we get started, I just want to ask everyone to please comment civilly in the comments. If you do want to put a comment, please let's not have any of this racist, sexist, bigotry, idiocy. I don't know what the word is. Idiot stuff that some people post online. I don't want any of that shit in this comment section. So if you have nothing good or nice, or at least nice to say, don't bother watching this video. Just go away. If you have genuine criticisms or not happy with the series or the episodes in the series, but you're not going to say it in such a stupid way, please be free to carry on. I would also ask those who have not watched the episodes to not put 100% your opinions. You're fine, but don't have a 100% conclusive opinion without watching any episode of this series, because that's not so good either. It's like if I was to have an opinion on The Godfather. I have not seen that film. Shocking, I know, but because I haven't seen that film, I can't say, yes, it's one of the greatest films of all time, or no, it's totally overrated. I can't say either of those things because I haven't seen the film. And similarly, I can't say with the Emotion movie that everybody's right, it's terrible, or everybody's wrong, it's actually pretty good. I can't say either of those things about that film because I haven't seen it yet. So, for those who haven't seen this series, please, if you're going to put something down, don't make it conclusive. Don't make it sound conclusive. Make it sound like you've heard it's not so good, or you've heard it's actually pretty good, or whatever. Just don't put anything conclusive like, I haven't seen this, but I know it's bad, even though I haven't seen it. Because that's just bad. That's just not very good thinking process. So, yeah, let's just keep comments civil and sensible and smart. And as for those who have seen the stories and have opinions, please be free to put your comments down, providing that they're sensible and polite. I won't have a go at you if you don't have a go at me, and don't have a go at each other. Okay? And this applies to everything, by the way, not just Doctor Who Series 12. So with those house rules out of the way, my ranking of Doctor Who Series 12. Gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome at last to my ranking of Doctor Who Series 12, now including Resolution, because I recently discovered that Resolution is now being counted as part of Series 12. This is probably due to Resolution being included on the Series 12 DVD and Blu-ray box set. Whether Revolution of the Daleks will be counted as Series 12 or Series 13, because that will probably only be on the Series 13 box set, is yet to be determined. If yes, then this ranking will probably get remade and updated with that story. But it's just like how I'm going to have to re-edit the Series 11 original ranking to remove Resolution. It will get a ranking anyway at a later date, but I'll do a re-edit, and that hopefully should work for everyone until the re-ranking. Series 12. I think this series is slightly better than Series 11, just a little bit. I mean, Series 11, I wasn't incredibly certain whether it was great. I liked it. I thought it was good. It had some good stories, some not so good stories, but I thought it was good. I thought it was midway on my series ranking, maybe lower half at least, but still better than some of the previous series, or at least for some stories anyway. But I wasn't incredibly certain. Series 12, I think, is a bit stronger. I think it's pretty good, but it's also left me a bit uncertain due to the direction it's going in. This may be due to the fact that it's partly in secret and partly that some of the other stories of the series didn't involve the story arc, which is a bit of a shame. Series 13 really needs to focus on its priorities, which would be telling the story arc as a good story mainly, but also wrapping it up in a good way as well by the end. Character development for companion or companions, especially Yasmin Khan. I think she got a bit more done in Series 12, but I still think we've got to have a bit more to go. With Graham and Ryan leading in Revolution of the Daleks, hopefully that will make some space. And yeah, and hopefully we'll just find some answers and hopefully wrap everything up neatly, because things are kind of in a bit of a mess at the moment, as far as everything's concerned. This is why some people are saying continuity is ruined / damaged. Because, and to be honest, some things, yeah, we can totally see that. Other things we're still uncertain about at the moment. So hopefully we'll get some more things. Also bring back Sasha Dewan's Master, because Sasha Dewan's Master needs to come back. And make it a bit more, maybe more than 2 appearances in the series. Make him the new Roger Delgado and Anthony Ainley. So, on to the Series 12 ranking. I've got my little notes, post-it note here that I can read off. Okay, the 9 stories, now including Resolution, we will be talking about are Resolution, Spyfall Parts 1 and 2, Orphan 55, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, Fugitive of the Judoon, Praxeus, Can You Hear Me, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, and Ascension of the Cybermen and The Timeless Children. And for the purposes of stories, Spyfall will be counted as one story. So if I just say Spyfall, just presume that's Spyfall Parts 1 and 2 together. Similarly, Ascension of the Cybermen and The Timeless Children will be done as one story. This is how I've been doing it for 2-parters, apart from my original Series 10 ranking, but I'm going to sort that out in a Series 10 re-ranking remake. Spoiler alert, both episodes of the 2-part story are the top 2 episodes of that ranking anyway, so there isn't a huge deal, so but say Ascension of the Cybermen and The Timeless Children were spread across this ranking, that would be a huge deal. So let's get started with number 9. Number 9 could possibly be the worst 13th Doctor story so far, depending what I think on the Series 11 episodes after a rewatch as part of my big marathon, which I'm currently just started into Series 3 of, after watching The Runaway Bride, after rewatching Resolution for the purposes of this ranking, following watching Series 10 again, 12 again, not Series 10, that's coming up later. But yeah, this episode is but yeah, depending on what I think of episodes in Series 11, specifically about 3 or 4 of them, for the 3 or 4 least favourites of the previous ranking, including an episode written by this writer, not Chris Chibnall, before anyone jumps on that wagon. And you can't just blame Chris Chibnall for everything, guys. I know he's the showrunner and everything, but still, it's like blaming Stephen Moffat for a Jamie Mathieson script that wasn't co-written by Stephen Moffat. Not that you would criticise the solo Jamie Mathieson script, would you now? Would you? But anyway, as I was saying, depending on what I think of some of the episodes from Series 11 that were lowered down on my ranking, this story is probably going to be my least favourite 13th Doctor story, unless something in Series 13 or one of those Series 11 stories does overtake it as the weakest story. But at the moment, this story is currently my least favourite 13th Doctor story, my least favourite of the Chibnall era so far, obviously, and as it was broadcast in 2020, it's my least favourite 2020s story, obviously. Orphan 55. To be honest, this story started good. I mean, it started typical 13th Doctor era that we kind of saw in Series 11. It kind of felt like after the big startup with Spyfall, we just felt like, oh, back with business as usual for the next 2 episodes. But I honestly think just business as usual would have been absolutely fine compared to what we actually got. I mean, this is no rant fest, thankfully, but still, it's not that good. It's the first quarter of an hour is actually really good. It's after that quarter of an hour is where we start to go down. It's once we start going out of the dome and investigating, because the first quarter of an hour, it seems like we're going to do a Series 12 style Paradise Towers in a way. And to be honest, I kind of like Paradise Towers. I actually think that one's better than this one, to be honest. But yeah, I kind of like Paradise Towers. It seems to be new Paradise Towers, the Series 13 style of that, Series 12 style of that. But after the first Dreg attack, which by the way is shot and edited so badly, I mean, the editing in this series, not all the time, but there is some dodgy editing, and visual effects now and again, and transitions. It's just a bit strange, and the way that the dregs were shot and edited in their big reveal. I was not scared by them. Bradley Walsh promised us some scary monsters. Maybe kids would be scared by these, but the way these guys were shot and edited, no, no. And maybe it's me growing up. But though, to be honest, by the time the Silents made their first appearance in the Impossible Astronaut, I wasn't really scared by them anymore. Now I was 11, so nearly 12, or 11, nearly 12. But still, maybe these guys would be scarier if they were shot better and edited better. But it's just a bit hokey. And these aren't going to be the last monsters that get this treatment, or last villains, to be honest. But yeah, and then the next half an hour is just this was probably, I mean, this and Ed Hines' other Doctor Who scripts, the It Takes You Away, were two stories that I kind of just felt when watching them that they weren't quite working for me, especially this one. But I just thought that maybe there was something wrong with me, but I just didn't feel like I was getting into them that much. But at least It Takes You Away had some interesting sci-fi concepts, and the universe that manifested itself as a talking frog to communicate with the Doctor, which a couple people criticised for, and for some reason criticised Chris Chibnall, even though it was Ed Hines' script. But honestly, I thought that was the best part of the story, just like how the best part of the James Bond film Moonraker is actually when they do go into bloody space. The bits that, apart from the double take pigeon, are what everyone complains about for that film. But Orphan 55, I just don't know. I don't think I quite got into it on the first viewing. Second and third viewings were a bit more enjoyable. I could have a bit more fun with them. But story-wise, it was still not very good. And the fact that it just revealed Earth to be, or Orphan 55 was Earth as its third act twist. It wouldn't be so bad if it would have been mentioned earlier on, but the whole twist of it being Earth and it being climate change, war, mass famine, overpopulation, etc., just basically anything that could possibly go wrong. It's just a last minute twist to throw in a message that is, for quite a few people, it did come across as very preachy, including my own mum. It did feel like a preach towards things, and this is probably the most preachy of these stories, to be honest. It's a message about climate change. Fair enough. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But don't kind of take over another episode just to do that, or incorporate it better, and don't waste the last minute or two just for a big speech about it. I mean, yeah, I know in the Zygon Invasion, about half the episode was that big speech. Okay, not half the actual episode, about a quarter actually. Quarter to a third was that speech, but still, that one was part of its story. This one was just tacked on at the end. I'm sorry, the Orphan 50, it just was. I like this era, but this story is it's not very good. I mean, it's all right. I did pass it at 5 out of 10, but that was me being nice. I was honestly being nice. And whilst I did enjoy it, honestly, it's not actually that good. Thankfully, we move on to much, much, much better things now. I mean, yeah, not everything is, not all of this. This series is not all 8, 9, 10s, and one dud, like how season 13 of the classic series was all 9 and 10s with one dud. No, very big dud in that case. No, this one's still got a few good stories, but I think there could have been improvements. So moving on to number 8. This story actually got an 8 out of 10 in my original review, so it would have actually come 6th on this list. But I thought, I was actually kind of surprised with myself about that, and I thought maybe I should lower it to a 7. And then after rewatching it, I thought, yeah, I mean, I like it. I thought it's a good episode, but perhaps I liked it more when I first and second saw the story. But now I think perhaps there could have been a bit more potential with it. Can you hear me? Well, I should bloody well hope so, otherwise this ranking's bloody pointless. Can You Hear Me is honestly a good episode. It's very good, and it's trying to do a kind of mental health storyline, and something about people being alone, etc. It's a good analogy. as well as also trying to do an interesting sci-fi concept with that. The problem is, I think there's a bit too much going on at the same time, because you've got these guys that giving people nightmares, and the companions have their own nightmares and own fears, but you're also doing the mental illness story, and you've also got this story with one of those characters experiencing some sort of mental illness, taking place in 14th century Syria. So, yeah, there's quite a lot going on, and not to mention the mid-story twist, and some pretty good animation bit there. Reminds me of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, where they would have an animation segment to tell the story without it being boring, like in X-Men Origins Wolverine. And the animation itself reminds me of the film Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is a bloody great film. But yeah, I think this story is just a bit stuffed with ideas. I think it could have played out on two ideas: these immortal characters and the companion nightmares, maybe for own mental illness as a analogy as well. But let's not do the serious stuff. Let's this story by design. When we saw the trailer for it, it looked like it was going to be a new version of the Nightmare Man from the Sarah Jane Adventures. And with the characters involved, this story could honestly have been a mix of the Celestial Toymaker, Enlightenment, and the Nightmare Man. But in reality, it kind of comes down as a little bit messy in places. It's not as messy as a story that's coming up later on this list, but I do like that one more. But I think this one I think it had too many ideas going at the same time, and I think it could have lost maybe the serious stuff at very least, and maybe expand on the companion nightmares. Because with Yasmin's, I had no idea what was going on until the very end. Ryan's made sense, Graham's made sense, but they were but especially Graham's, they were very short, and the Doctor's was just a brief look into the at the series finale before it came around. Chris Chibnall apparently co-wrote this story, and along with Praxeus, but on these two cases, it doesn't really feel like they needed him to be co-writer. In fact, any story other than Fugitive of the Judoon that he would have co-written with somebody else would honestly have been Haunting of Villa Diodati, but that one was a standalone writer, at least credited anyway. Overall, Can You Hear Me is good, but I think it could have been a lot better. Moving on to number 7, another story that I thought was good, but could have been better. But I think it did well with what it had to do, more or less, but not spectacularly. It's just a good episode. Praxeus. I think this story's got the most mixed reception of any of the episodes, with the possible exception of the finale. As this story pleases some people and it doesn't please some people. Personally, I think it's okay. I think it's good. I think it's a good story. I think it could have been done better, but I think the story was well done enough. The idea of this disease coming through plastics was good, and it didn't have to be Autons, although I would have liked the Autons or the Nesting Consciousness. I would have been fine with that. Same for the Sea Devils, who were rumoured to be in a Series 12 episode, but they weren't. Maybe it was going to be the case. It was going to be something by Sea Devils or Autons, but then they changed it, which would have been a shame if that was the case. Then again, we did have the Judoon just before, so maybe we would have been stuffing it a little bit with reoccurring monsters. But I think Praxeus is a good story. I think it's pretty interesting. It's just, I think maybe we could have expanded it a little bit more. And I think the 13th Doctor, I honestly thought this was going to be the story where she would just not talk so much, where she would not do so much exposition. I thought this one was going to maybe calm it down without having to talk so much. Boy, was I wrong. Not only that, but I think this is one of the stories where she's more talky, which isn't too bad. But I think the way 13's written is that they make her do a lot of exposition without much character interaction. If you're doing exposition, I do find it a good thing if maybe some other characters interact with it, maybe as responding to it, or maybe if they're sharing in the exposition. I do think Jodie Whittaker does exposition well, though I think David Tennant does it better, as seen in Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. But it's just, I don't know, I think maybe if there was a bit more character interaction from the other characters, they're just like, what? From the other characters, maybe it would be a little bit better, a bit more fun. If there was ever a multi-Doctor story in the 13th Doctor's era, and she started doing lots of exposition, I can see the other Doctors jumping in, to do a bit more exposition as well. And I say multi-doctor story other than Fugitive of the Judoon, technically. But I mean, another multi-doctor story, like maybe 13 met 10, 12, 11, 9, and she started expositioning and then they all jumped in with their own bits. That would be fun. Besides that, I think the story does focus a lot more on some of its side characters, which is fine. It's making some good development of them. Well, not so much with Gabriella, but the other guys, yeah. And the villains are alright, I guess. Suki Cheng, I guess, is the first villain to not get away with what she's done. She does have a price to pay, but then again, she wasn't as bad as some of the other villains, so it might also be a bit unfair on her. Overall, there's not really much more I can say about this story that I may have not already have said, apart from it's good, but it could have been better. Same with Can You Hear Me, except this time I don't think there's that much you could lose, though I think there was a bit more you could gain. Well, apart from maybe some exposition, maybe being a bit more interesting as well. Moving on to number 6. Oh boy, this story. Oh, get ready for red flags. Okay, number 6. Number 6 is the season finale. Oh boy, I can see some red flags going up right now. Number 6 is Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. Right, Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. I'm going to get something out straight. I don't think this story's bad. I don't think this story's disappointing. I don't think this story's underwhelming. But I do think this story is very messy. This story has a very messy structure, and that's my biggest problem with this story, especially episode 10, Timeless Children. And episode 9, half the story is, or at least a third of the story, is dedicated to this bloody Brendan stuff, which turns out to be stuff the Master is projecting from the Matrix and showing the Doctor, except it's never shown to be dreams or visions that the Doctor's seeing. It's just scenes intercut between moments of the actual episode. We're just thinking, get back to the bloody Cybermen, just like how some people were getting a bit fed up with the scenes from Resolution with the character-driven stuff, and they wanted to get back to the Dalek. Except those scenes actually work within that story. Those scenes, and they're edited in a way that actually work in that story. These scenes don't. These scenes are poorly put into this story. If the Master is trying to show the Doctor visions, fair enough, but what the flying hell? And is the whole Brendan stuff supposed to be an allergy comparison to the Timeless Child story? Because it doesn't work. What is going on with this bloody Brendan stuff? You could have cut half of that out and dedicated more time to the flipping Cybermen, or to the Cybermen plot, or maybe even build up the story arc in a different way. Because it does feel like we need a third episode. It does feel like we could have Ascension to Cybermen, middle episode, the Timeless Children, and the middle episode sorts out the Cyberman stuff, apart from maybe a few still out there, and then the last episode is dedicated to the Master and the Doctor's stuff, and the others still have a few Cybermen to fight off, but they can still manage to escape them, and the Cybermen are still defeated, but the bigger army is stopped in the episode before. It's just, this episode's just so messy. So messy. Oh, and the whole Timeless Child reveal. I do agree, maybe it should have been the Master. At least it would have made more sense on a continuity basis. And I can see why a couple of people are getting a bit upset about it, including people who haven't watched the episode. It is playing with the idea from the novel Lungbearer to an even more extreme extent. Because Lungbearer just implies that the Doctor was this other person and then loomed into the Doctor at some point or something. Whilst the Timeless Child implies that they just regenerated the Doctor back into a child, and then would cap their regeneration limit to the usual 12. Which also, somehow this erases the half-human Doctor, which is... I actually like that idea. But I would be fine with that being lost if the whole Timeless Child thing made a bit more sense. I think the problem is they're saving the majority of it for next series, and this finale actually feels more of a setup for series 13 rather than answering some of the questions in its own right. It's so I think the problem is because series 11 did absolutely nothing with it. I think the problem is Series 11 had no story arc. It did not play with this story arc. The only bit was to mention in the Ghost Monument, but that's about it. Nothing else. Series 11 wasted an entire year and 2 years technically, which count 2019, but an entire series. Not if you wanted to make this a arc across the Doctor's tenure, you should have you should have had more in Series 11. Maybe even if it was a few more references throughout the series, like maybe some of the other monsters knew about the Timeless Children, and then Series 12 it becomes more of a bigger player. But it just doesn't quite work. I really hope Chibnall has got a Cartmore master plan on the way, going in his head, because otherwise this is gonna crash and burn next series. Because at the moment, as far as we are aware, we could actually be singing the praises at the end of next series about what happened. Who knew? Never know. I mean, we could be saying this is the best thing since the casting of David Tennant, for all we know. But yeah, it's just at the moment it's very up in the air. It's very questionable. And there's a reason why quite a few people are not happy with it. And to be honest, the reception I have been seeing from it has actually kind of made me question whether I want to be in this fan base. Not for the show itself, but for the reception by certain fans, and even some people who haven't even watched the episodes. Hence what I call tabloid headline information, where you just get a little bit of what's happened. You hear about what's just happened, but you don't get the full juicy details unless you deliberately go looking for them. And even then, you can still base your opinion even after that, you can still base an opinion just on something that sounds like it's tabloid headline, rather than the whole article, so to speak. Even if you have read the whole article, but still, it's just this change. Yeah, this change in the show has really ripped the fan base apart more than I think it did back in 2017 with the casting of the 13th Doctor, and throughout 2018 with Series 11's airing. Some people might just be hating it just for the sake of it, as per usual, and some people are hating elements that we would say, really, that's your biggest problem with this story, such as the Timeless Child being a black girl. Yeah, that's some people's big problems, apparently. The Timeless Child was a black girl instead of a white boy for some reason. Jesus Christ, it can be any bloody one. It's a kid. Jesus Christ. Speaking of that, some poor visual effects when Brendan and the Timeless Child are falling over the cliffs, with some questionable direction towards the kid's performance in the latter bit. Like I said in the review, I don't completely blame the kid. I think maybe maybe a bit more direction to show a reaction could have been done. This story is so crammed with stuff, by the way. But it's not just the Timeless Child stuff. The Cyberman stuff also gets a bit crammed. It's not so bad in Ascension of the Cybermen, besides all the Brendan shit. But when we get to Ascension, when we get to the Timeless Children, it just feels so much is going on. So much. We needed another episode. I know this, or at least make Ascension of the Cybermen 65 minutes like the Timeless Children was. And even then, that story didn't feel long enough. That episode didn't feel long enough either. And the bloody ending of the episode. I know you want to tie it into the Christmas New Year special. I know you want to do it in a similar way to Doomsday and Last of the Time Lords, and to a lesser extent, Death in Heaven. But the way it's handled is shit. I'm sorry. These two episodes I do like them. I do enjoy them. I think they're good, mostly. But there are quite a few problems with them, and I think some of them could just have been ironed out and just fixed up. It could have been so much better. Maybe a third episode. Maybe lose Orphan fucking 55 and have a third episode for the finale, not including the Haunting Villa Diodati. That's its own standalone story, technically, that leads into this finale. But yeah, it's just a bloody mess, structurally, storily, and even a bit visually in places, with some dodgy visual effects and editing in places, such as with those falling over the cliff bits. Maybe it would have been worth. Maybe it would have been better if it just wasn't the Cyberman story. Maybe we should have just waited for the Cyberman to come back next year. That it might have just been better if it was just focused on wrapping up the Timeless Child arc. But no, we've got to have all our eggs in one basket by the looks of it, and this is a problem that's coming up in a few stories further on this list, but handled it a bit better. So, on the whole, Timeless Children and Ascension of the Cybermen, it's a good story, but honestly, it could have been a hell of a lot better, at least in a structural point of view. Number 5. Okay, we're getting to the very good stories now. Starting with one of the lesser messy stories of the series, talk about subversion. Number 5 is Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. Yeah, I just simply liked this episode. I thought it was a good story. I thought the stuff with Nikola Tesla was great. It's probably my least favorite. It's not my least favorite historical story of the 13th Doctor's era. That would go to the Witchfinders. I thought Nikola Tesla's was a very good story. It was very well done in writing historical characters. I think the villains kind of sucked though. The Skiffer and the Skiffer. Though I do like Angia Mohara, Rani in the Sarah Jane Adventures. Her performance as the Skiffer Queen, I thought that was brilliant. I thought she was really great. But the villains themselves weren't that great. And also, when we first saw the Skiffer Queen, same problem with the Dregs when we first get introduced to them. Stupid, quick editing of several different close-up shots, and a few other times we see that as well. And Tim Shaw, we had the same problem with that in his first episode, occasionally. But I don't like stuff like that. Can we just have good, normal reveals? And I also watched Runaway Bride, as I mentioned, after Resolution, and that had to a lesser extent, a similar problem. That story's also kind of got some dodgy editing as well, to be honest. I'll talk more about that in its review. But yeah, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, I still think it's a good story, good historical, but I think the villains kind of suck, at least with Demons of the Punjab. Whilst the aliens were not as necessary, they do kind of fit into the story they're in because of what they're doing. Though if you took them out, it wouldn't change an awful lot. But here, the whole point of the story is that these aliens are coming for Nikola Tesla, but they're not very interesting, and they're the weakest part of the story, despite a great performance from Angie Mahandra. I apologise if I got that wrong. Also, fun fact, she and Sacha Dhawan, who plays the Master in this series, are in a relationship. They're partners. Interesting. Do you think we're going to have something akin to David Tennant and Georgia Moffat's relationship further down the line? Maybe. But on the whole, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror is a good story, and for people who aren't so keen on some of the more story arc stuff in this series, this episode's more like business as usual, but good business as usual rather than bad business as usual with Orphan 55. And like I said, I'd even take that over what we got. Okay, moving on to number 4. Another controversial one. Red flag alert. Maybe amber ones, but still controversy. But honestly, this story is pretty good. It's a very good story, and I think despite a bit of a messy final act, it's still handled well. At least we know what we're doing most of the time. Fugitive of the Judoon. Yeah, I like Fugitive of the Judoon. I think it's a good story. The first half with our Big Chief Rhino boys are good. It's really, really good. It looks like it's going to be a fun Judoon story on Earth, even though they're not supposed to be on Earth, as established a few times before. These guys don't seem to give a care about the rules, as we see. These guys are obviously a bit more extreme than the usual guys. But they're looking for this fugitive and on Earth in Gloucester, and it seems to be this fun story. And then we get a big twist halfway through, and whilst I kind of like the twist, I'm also unsure where it's going. I really hope the Roof Doctor gets explained some point next series, because by God, they didn't explain it at the end of this series. And again, another episode would have helped with a lot of stuff we were expecting to do in the series finale. And whilst it thankfully didn't give itself so much of a burden to do in the last episode or the last 2 episodes, it did have a big burden with what it did get, whilst other elements did noticeably get missed out. Whilst Captain Jack might be coming back in the upcoming Christmas New Year special, supposedly, we're unsure. The Fugitive and the Judoon did make a brief appearance at the end of the series finale and might be in the special as well, possibly, or next series. The mystery of the Roof Doctor is still uncertain. Is she pre-Hartnell? Is she a Timeless Child incarnation? Or is she another incarnation sometime between Hartnell and Whittaker that somehow, shut up! That somehow didn't get, that we somehow don't know about. I mean, we didn't know about the War Doctor, but I think now, by this point, the whole timeline is now more or less watertight. Unless it's something like along the lines of this incarnation was somewhere, e.g. between 2 and 3, for instance, as some people have theorized. Time Lords give the Doctor an extra life and erase the memories of that incarnation and give the Doctor an extra life to make up for it, making Ash give the Doctor 14 incarnations in their first regeneration cycle, and would have been if it wasn't for David Tennant regenerating into himself, of course, which sort of would make up for that. But other than that, the only other possibility is post-Whittaker, and Ruth Doctor has lost her memories rather than Whittaker's Doctor. And Jo Martin's Ruth Doctor has lost her memories rather than Jodie Whittaker's 13th, as apparently Alternative Universe, Parallel Universe, has been dismissed by Chris Chibnall himself. Jo Martin is officially one of the Doctors as part of the main universe that we follow in the TV series. That's the questionable bit. On top of that, we've got a lot of Captain Jack stuff sprinkled across the episode. And whilst it's great to see him again, we didn't get an awful lot out of him. He just turned up, said some exposition for the finale, and then went away again. I mean, it's nice to see the Nanjings again, but who was he fighting? Who was he running away from? Was it the Cybermen? What's going on? We really need to expand on some stuff. Maybe Fugitive of the Judoon should have been a 2-parter. Maybe we should have lost some of these single part stories and made some of these other stories 2 or 3-parters. I think Spyfall could have been a 3-parter, maybe, to wrap itself up a bit more. The finale could have been a 3-parter. Keep Haunting of Villa Diodati, because that ties into that story. Make this one a 2-parter. And that's 2, 5, 4. Throw in one more episode. Nikola Tesla, maybe? Throw in Nikola Tesla, and yeah, that's pretty much series 12. There, lose Orphan 55, lose Praxeus, lose Can You Hear Me? Let's have a better version of Can You Hear Me instead. I did like Nikola Tesla, though. Like I said at the start, series 13 needs to have its priorities. And I think answering most of the questions set in series 12 is its biggest priority, as well as, second biggest priority after wrapping up the Timeless Children arc in a good, or at least satisfactory way, and as a good story, as opposed to just going all over the place like we did this series. Okay, moving on to number 3. This story was almost the best story by default. Had a certain other episode not joined in, and also we included another certain episode. This two episodes. This story was a great way to get us into series 12. It was a great start, great adventure, and a good way to start what ultimately became a bit of a messy story arc, and reintroduce into what is currently a messy Doctor multi-season arc. Spyfall. I like Spyfall quite a bit. I think parts 1 and 2 are great episodes, and probably 2 of the strongest episodes of the series. And it's one of my favourite stories of the 13th Doctor's era so far. I would say maybe not top 5, top 6. Because there's 3 from series 11, and these next 2 I would put above this one, but I would say this one's probably top 6 stories, top 7 episodes. But yeah, Spyfall is a fun, enjoyable, and entertaining story. It's a bit messy in places. Maybe there could have been a 3rd episode to wrap things up a bit more. And some of the stuff with the companions in the present day in part 2 doesn't match the historical stuff, time hopping stuff with the Doctor in part 2. However, I think the plot about alien spies is really great. How the Doctor teams up with this friend of hers, or who she thinks is a friend of hers, to help stop these aliens, but it turns out that the Master has taken his place, and it's him behind the Kasavan. Daniel Barton's a pretty cool villain. It's a shame he gets away at the end, and unlike Diet Trump from Series 11, Robinson, where he's a villain, but he hasn't actually done any... Well, he has done a couple of things wrong, but not to the extent of Barton, so him getting away without repercussions is bad, but it's worse with ones who who do even worse things, like Barton. He actually does some criminal stuff, or at least very criminal stuff at the very least, and he gets away with it. So hope he doesn't come back this later in this series. As neither did Robinson, and some people will theorize that it's possible that they could come back next series. But again, Series 13 needs to prioritize itself on stuff, and unfortunately, Series 12 didn't have that many. But Spyfall, I think, was a great start to the series, and it was kind of what we would at the start, moving into what we were hoping was going to have this in Resolution, were we hoping the transition from series 11 to 12 was going to be, before it went absolutely batshit crazy. But yeah, I thought it was a great start and really enjoyable. Okay, moving on to number 2, and it's quite embarrassing to see that the second best episode of the season is a special. Not an actual episode of the series, it's a special. This was originally 4th in the Series 11 ranking, but with that one having to be changed to just be the 10 episodes of that series, and this one moved here, it's now bumped higher on this ranking to number 2. You can tell how high those top 3 Series 11 stories are compared to the top 2 of these this series are then. But I think this one is a great story. But I think this one's a great story, and it was a great transitional episode between series 11 and 12. Resolution. Apologies for any noise outside. Also known as Resolution of the Daleks, except it isn't. But it would have been cool if it was. But Resolution is a fun, action-packed New Year's Day special, and thankfully gave us a Doctor Who story in 2019, other than the Macra Tower animated version. But that technically wasn't a new story, it was just a new version of that one. So Resolution, but it was a great New Year special. Great return of the Daleks, possibly their best story since 2005, question mark. Depends how I feel on some of the Dalek stories when I go through these rewatches. But definitely since 2005, 2006. Definitely better than any of the Moffat era stories, including Victory of the Daleks, which I actually do like. But yeah, there's a few structural issues, like the whole Ryan and his dad talking subplot does come in, and some bits they do kind of feel like they're putting at wrong times, maybe, or maybe they could have been spread out a bit better. But on the whole, I think this story is really great and really enjoyable and very fun. And it would have been it's a great story that would have kind of showed the strengths of Series 11 and some weaknesses, admittedly, but also showing us what maybe Series 12 could have been, if it'd been a bit more focused, perhaps. And yeah, it's very enjoyable. I also bloody love that scarf 13 has. I put that on my birthday list. I'm not expecting to get it, but I've put that on my birthday list. 13th Doctor scarf thing that Lovati has done. I love that scarf. I wouldn't mind that being part of her costume on a regular basis. At least bring it back for Revolution of the Daleks. I love that scarf. I know some people have criticised it when the pictures first came out, but I don't give a shit. I don't care if it's supposed to represent LGBT or representation like the rainbow on her t-shirt, or if it's just a nice scarf. I don't care either way. I just like the scarf. Okay, so let's not have any bad comments about the Resolution scarf. Okay, you wouldn't criticise any of the Tom Baker ones now, would you? Okay, moving on to number 1, the highlight of the story by pretty much a mile, despite some other good stories, in my opinion. But despite that, this story takes the crowning jewel of Series 12 by a mile. And with me, every new series story has had at least one 10 out of 10 episode or story, or maybe Series 7 and 8 might not after the rewatches of those, but definitely all the other ones have. And like with Series 10, I honestly got scared that this series wouldn't have one this time around, because it came so late. This one came third to last, whilst Series 10 came second to last, and then last. They were the last 2 episodes of the series. So I was getting a bit scared that there wouldn't be a 10 out of 10 story in Series 10, but thankfully we got Woken Up in Time and The Doctor Falls, which not only were those worthy 10 out of 10, but they're 2 of the best episodes of the entire new series, maybe even the entire show. And whilst this one doesn't get to those levels, it's still a strong 13th Doctor story, and honestly the best episode of Series 12. The Haunting of Villa Diodati. This is a great episode. Starts off as a great historical mystery, horror story with Mary Shelley, Lord Byron, and other notable historical people who were at Villa Diodati at the time. It was a good story, a good mystery adventure, and some scary stuff with some sci-fi things going on. Then we get to the halfway point and things start making sense, with a bit of sci-fi jiggery-pokery and personal dilemma, and the lone Cyberman trying to get what he wants, and the setup for the finale. I thought this was a really great episode. I thought this was a great story. It put great storytelling first, and whilst it did set up the finale in the second half, it didn't rush or overstuff itself. It didn't do it in a messy way. This is probably the tidiest episode of the series, including Resolution. And it's also very fun, very enjoyable. The characters are great. The main characters are fun as well. And it's just some really great stuff. Also, throughout this series, the 13th Doctor's been getting darker and darker and more serious. This episode and the finale show that off, especially Ascension to Cybermen, show that off really well. The 13th Doctor's more serious side, and when she can go a bit more serious or dark and stuff. And I really enjoyed that. I really like how that is played out, and I would love to see more of that played out in Series 13. And yeah, it's just an absolutely brilliant story. And Shad is probably the most creative Cyberman in a while. Well, for a very long time, in fact. I did like Bill, of course, from World and Earth and Time, Dr. Ford, Bill Cyberman. But I think the Shad is a very interesting creation. I think that would be down to Chris Chibnall due to him being in the finale. But I think Maxine Alderton has written the character in similarly a great way and incorporated him into her story brilliantly. You can see why this story should have been the co-writer Chibnall when a guest writer instead of Praxeus, or Can You Hear Me? Especially Praxeus. But yeah, this one's just an absolute blast throughout. It's just a really great story and really enjoyable, and I love how the story was written. And yeah, just absolutely brilliant. Maxine Alderton has been confirmed to be a writer. Well, I don't know if she's confirmed to be a writer, but she's definitely going to be involved creatively in Series 13 alongside Chris Chibnall. So she may be writing another episode or two next series. And I, for one, alongside a few other people, are looking forward to seeing what she comes up with next. On the other hand, Ed Heim has also been confirmed to be writing a Doctor story. And like I said at the end of my review of Orphan 55, I'm okay with him coming back for a third script, but if I'm not so keen on his third script as much as I was with his first, or even worse, his second, then 3 strikes and I don't want him coming back for a fourth. If he can redeem himself like Steve Thompson, if he can redeem himself like Steve Thompson did with Time Heist, then I'd be fine with him coming back again. But if the third story doesn't impress me, but if his third script impresses me as much as one or two, his first or second, then that's his 3 strikes. I don't want him coming back for a fourth. As for Maxine Alderton, on the other hand, her first story has made me hope that she becomes a regular of every series for the next couple of years, like Mark Gatiss did. Then again, different stories alternate. I mean, Vinay Patel wrote Demons of the Punjab, and now he's written Fugitive of the Judoon. They're very different. Pete Matiga wrote Kablam, and now he's written Praxeus. Praxeus is a bit of a step down from Kablam. Fugitive is also kind of a step down from Demons, but then again, it was a co-write with Chris Chibnall and the whole still story. But both of them was cool. But then again, Demons of the Punjab is a difficult one to top, to be honest. Apart from if you're Mallory Blackman and you write Rosa. But anyway, overall, Series 12, I like it. I think it's a good series. But Connor could honestly have been better. I think it could have been a lot stronger. I prefer it to Series 11 but I think it needed to have a bit more strength. But who knows, maybe Series 13 will put certain priorities first and hopefully deliver on a satisfactory conclusion to the Timeless Child arc and wrap up a couple of questions posed in this era, especially if it's 13's final series, depending on what happens. And before we finish, to wrap up the ranking, number 9 is Orphan 55, number 8 is Can You Hear Me, number 7 is Praxeus, number 6 is Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children, number 5 is Nikola Tesla's The Night of Terror, number 4 is Fugitive of the Judoon, number 3 is Spyfall, Number 2 is Resolution, and number 1 is the Haunting of Villa Diodati. And speak of that, that one is currently my third favourite 13th Doctor story after Rosa and Demons of the Punjab. Then again, I gave Demons of the Punjab a 9 out of 10 last year, but I thought actually maybe I should give that a 10 after rewatching it. So maybe, and yes, I did give Demons of the Punjab a 9 out of 10 in its original review, but I'd probably give it a 10 now. So yeah, and if not, then Dawn to Diodati would be my second favourite 13th Doctor story. Things are looking up for Series 12, more and more, each time. But yeah, like I said, I do like Series 12, but I think it could have been even better. Or at least structured a bit less messily. Hopefully Series 13, like I said, put some priorities first and just focus on them. Okay, so that's it from my Series 12 ranking, and this is the end of the Series 12 reviews. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.